Great. Thanks so much again for being here, everyone. Again, my name is Ray Champion. I use he, him pronouns, and we're here to talk about the Chicago Action Lab that's kicking off in March of this year. And before we get started, I wanted to ask everybody to go ahead and please rename yourself, include your name, pronouns, if you'd like us to use those, and the name of your organization. And we'd love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. So you can say your organization, your neighborhood, how you're feeling about the very cold weather that we're having right now. But just take a moment to rename yourself and introduce yourself in the chat so we can get a sense of who all is in the room.
Okay, I'll start it off. Dave Abshire, LB Steel, Vice President, Harvey, Illinois.
Thanks, Dave.
I'm Nancy Wilson, CEO of Morrison Container Handling Solutions in Glenwood, Illinois.
Thanks, Nancy. And we don't have to have everybody voice over their introductions. You can just type them in the chat. So our agenda for today, we are going to share about the Chicago Action Lab. We want to give you a little bit of background on Talent Rewired, the work that we do. We'll talk about what the experience will look like, the different components that are involved with it, what are the expectations that we have for the employers that participate, and the time commitment, and then what are the next steps in terms of registering and properly signing up for the program. I want to highlight this is Talent Rewire is working in a partnership with other local Chicago partners. And so we're really grateful for their support, many of whom are on the call today. And a little bit about Talent Rewire. So our mission is to unlock economic mobility for frontline workers. And I'll define what we mean by frontline workers in a little bit, but we do this in a couple of different ways. And so we leverage research tools and experiences to help employers transform their talent systems. We try to scale those learnings in the field, and we try to model equity and frontline centered systems change. And so our work is fundamentally about unlocking economic mobility for frontline workers, and we do this via frontline centered systems change. Wanted to highlight some of the research. So in addition to the programs like the action labs that we do, we also have a research arm. And so I wanted to highlight the two pieces of research that came out most recently, How Change Happens and What Good Looks Like, both of which are available on our website. And then two tools that are here at the bottom of the slides, our Opportunity Navigator, which is an assessment for employers to get a baseline sense of where they are with their talent practices, and an Elevating Frontline Employee Voice tool, which is used to really unlock employee voice at organizations with significant frontline operations. And again, all of these are available on our website, and we use these learnings to inform our programming and how we engage with our employer audience. Giving you a snapshot here of the various employers that we work with. We are sector agnostic. Size of employers are totally open. We work with small companies, large companies, really anyone that is open to thinking about enhancing their talent practices for the organizations. We will work with them, and our programs are generally cohort programs that gives folks an opportunity to work alongside companies that are both in their sector, but then also outside their sector. So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to just give a more firm definition of what we mean when we're talking about frontline employees. And so we're talking about folks who are directly involved in making a product or providing a service, who are non-salaried and in positions that don't require advanced technical expertise, generally speaking. And so some of the industries that we have worked with in the past, service industries, retail, hospitality, hotels, food service, manufacturing, production, distribution companies, engineering, both the traditional and clean jobs that are now emerging, food production, financial services, technology, and consumer electronics. So any organization that has significant frontline operations is a fit for our Talent Rewire program. And why do we think about the frontline talent? And so there are approximately 50 million Americans that are working in hourly low-wage jobs. And what we know about them is that nearly 2/3 of them are women. Approximately 40% of those folks identify as people of color. 25% live at or below the poverty line, and approximately 17% of those folks are immigrants. And so we know that these folks want to be promoted at their organizations. We know that the DEI policies are maybe not always affecting them or reaching them in the same way. And we also know that sometimes these folks are not experiencing psychological safety at work. And so our work hopes to unlock and improve the standards of conditions for the folks in these frontline roles. And so we know in terms of employers that you all are having challenges with retaining these employees. And so we know that there's an opportunity cost with loss of business. And we also know that employers are under an increased scrutiny to do the right thing and increase the wages, benefits, and safety measures for their frontline staff. So we know that the employees are struggling with low wages, and we know that employers are having a hard time retaining their staff and retaining their workers. And so the Talent Rewire opportunity here is an opportunity for folks to work with peers. So working with a cohort of other employers who are committed to intentionally disrupting their current talent practices and systems. So again, we're wanting to unlock the potential for frontline folks and increase and improve the job quality for those frontline staff.
Hi all.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to my colleague Scotty, who's going to share about the outcomes for the Employer Action Lab.
Thank you, Ray. Ray provided a great overview of Talent Rewire and a high-level overview of what this cohort experience is all about. I'm going to take some time right now to dive deeper into the Action Lab, what the outcomes are, what the experience is like when you're participating. Ray will then share some case study examples, and we'll open it up for questions.
All right.
And so if a question comes up, please put it in the chat, and we'll either answer it as part of this conversation that we're having now, or we'll review it at the end. But really wanted to let you know that in this experience that starts in March,
I'm done talking to you.
that the outcomes include things like innovating new strategies that are grounded in employees' needs and inputs. We are going to identify and create a scalable pilot program to address a talent need. We're going to understand the value of intentional and consistent engagement with frontline talent. And we're going to become part of a growing group of employers who are rewiring talent systems. So the reality is that we're going to take you, next slide, please. Let's really talk through what that is like. So the first part of the experience, Activate, is in March. And when we see you for 2 days in person in March, what's going to end up happening is we're going to engage in a conversation about employee voice. What is it? How do we leverage it? How do we make sure that employees feel comfortable, safe, and excited to share questions with us, to raise concerns, to voice excitement? So Activate is all about creating that environment and that space where we are elevating employee voice. The next piece is Elevate, which is really going to be about a virtual experience with some synchronous touch points. So there are opportunities where you're going to work with a person one-on-one. You're going to have a couple hours with Talent Rewire. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some data that we get from our frontline employees and start to think about, based on this feedback that we got from our frontline employees, they are elevating these concerns to us. Then what ends up happening is we see you for a couple days in October at Create. And at Create, what ends up happening is we say, based on these ideas that were elevated to us from our frontline employees, we're going to create a hack or small pilot program that is going to address those talent needs. Next slide, please. So what you'll see is we've got mid-March to connect in person. Elevate is going to be online or virtual with some synchronous touch points. We're going to have Create, which is going to be in early October, and we're going to get some feedback on the pilot design that we have. And then at the end of December, you're going to share where you're at. This is the pilot we started. This is the success rate we've had, or these are the first 3 steps we've made to make it happen. So it's super exciting. What you'll see at the bottom of that orange row there is that there's something called TAPS. These are our technical assistance providers. I think they're on a slide coming up. And so I'll talk about all these different components in just a minute. But you'll see that you are engaged with us from October until December, or from March until December, excuse me. So March until December. Go ahead to the next slide and I'll break down some of these different components that are in the program. The first one that I mentioned are TAPS, the technical assistance providers. Technical assistance providers are people from Chicago in different workforce development organizations who have a real connection to the regional needs of employers and employees in Chicagoland. And what they're going to end up doing is they're going to meet with you one-on-one once a month to help shepherd you through this process. They're your touch point that have the regional context, that have the Talent Rewire knowledge, and have the ability to raise questions and help you think about how to implement your pilot or your hack. So it's a really wonderful experience in terms of building this one-on-one relationship. The technical assistance providers will be at the in-person experiences. And then again, as I said, they'll connect with you once a month. Next slide. We also have frontline advisors. So what we'll do is we'll bring in frontline advisors from the Chicagoland region. These are people who have or are current frontline employees. And what they'll do is they will offer up proximity and connection in terms of sharing their lived experience, in terms of thinking about the narratives that exist around frontline employees and how to shift those narratives that we might have. And then they'll give feedback in terms of program design from a frontline perspective. So thinking about the people that you want to impact, you are getting their voice. They're not people from your organizations, they're people from your region. We look at them as experts, knowledgeable, and really helpful in terms of pushing project forward and giving insightful feedback. So let's talk a little bit about the expectations and the time commitment and what our participants are, or who we're hoping to have as participants. So one thing that we know is that if you're here, you're interested, and that is the number one most important piece to your participant profile. We want to make sure that you as an organization have a public commitment to advancing equity. We want to make sure that you can think about frontline data. We don't need to see your data, but you need to be able to have access to your data, whether it's quantitative, so actual numbers that you're collecting, or qualitative, interviews, conversations you're having with frontline. We want you to be able to commit to the entire Action Lab. So attending the 2 days in March, attending the 2 days in October, and participating in the virtual experiences between and after till the end of December. And we want to make sure that we have a decision maker in the room, someone who in your organization has the authority to say, yes, this is going to happen. Some of the people on your team might be human resources leaders. They might be diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging leaders, people in operations, talent and acquisition leaders, frontline employee managers, different levels within the organization, cross-functional. Next slide, please. So it's a 10-month program with 2 in-person convenings, 2 virtual convenings, and then we've got your technical assistance provider calls that will last 30 to 60 minutes, depending on your needs and interest and availability. We also know that there will be some time where you might need to do some organizational work to really have separate meetings to make sure that the work is progressing forward. We know that the work is not going to be done only in your commitment of time to us, but it will take some time outside of working with us to make sure that the pilot is identified and hopefully begun to be implemented. Next slide, please. Employers, we're going to want you to confirm your availability for all sessions. So your team of 3 to 4 people, 2 to 4 people, make sure that you're available for all those sessions. We're going to want to make sure that you want to work with a technical assistance provider from the region. We're going to want to make sure that you implement a practice change. And we're going to ask you to sign an MOU so that we're all on the same page for participation. Now, the next big question that you probably are wondering is, what kinds of pilots is it that people do? So I'm going to turn it over to Ray, and he's going to share a couple pilots that have happened in previous Action Labs, and then we're going to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Scotty. And so I want to offer the caveat here that the 3 employers I'm going to discuss here are alumni of our programs, but Talent Rewire is not taking credit for all the outcomes here that happened with their projects. These are alumni. We work with them. There were some mind shift changes with their staff. These are projects that maybe were started on or were in the middle of as they joined our programs, and so we were thought partners along the road with them. But these are alumni of our programs, and wanted to just offer that framing before I got started. And so as we think about what these potential projects can look like, Scotty has now sort of given you an idea of what the program looks like. And so now I want to show you what some of those outcomes can look like. And so wanted to highlight 3 of our alumni, Rhino Foods, Caterpillar, and Tyson, and give you a sense of where their project ideas were and what the outcomes were for those projects. And so let's start with Tyson. I'm sorry, let's start with Rhino. And so Rhino created a income advance program at their organization, and that guarantees same-day access to $1,000 for emergency or unplanned needs. And so in discussions with their frontline staff, they learned that folks had a lot of short-term needs for immediate cash, and were oftentimes going to more predatory services to get that cash. And so instead of relying on those systems, the Rhino decided to build a process where those staff were able to get an income advance directly from the organization themselves. And it was repaid through weekly payroll deductions. After Rhino did this, 34% of their employees took advantage of this and got at least one advance. We also know that the company had a 36% increase in employee retention since this program started, and they've now sort of effectively spread the practice to other plants and warehouses. The next alumni I wanted to highlight is Caterpillar. This one is focused around community partnerships. And to be honest, actually, I think most of our pilot projects end up being community partnerships, in that organizations realize, hey, we can't do this all alone. So who is in the community that can help us do this? Which is why we have leaned on the technical assistance providers and the frontline council as opportunities to really think about what you can do locally. And so with Caterpillar, they created a partnership with public schools in their area to create a program that focuses on education, employment, economic foundation, and essential skills. So this is a partnership with Emmanuel Academy. And the idea was to really start to recruit students with the technical expertise for paid practical experience. So again, they were having a problem with retaining frontline staff. And so they started to think, how can we recruit differently? How can we bring on a different type of person into our organization? The outcome here is that 7 students completed the program, and 4 of them were hired into full-time roles. And the reason why I think this is a helpful example is that you'll see that, we're not saying that Caterpillar hired all 7 of the students. They hired 4 out of 7 of the roles. And I think it's important as we go through our pilot project is that we're going to have some wins and we're going to have some misses. And it's what we encourage you all to think about in the Action Lab is this is a learning opportunity. This is a learning experience. So we're not looking for a 100% participation in the initiative that you do. We're looking to make some change, see how things are going, and then try to replicate it or improve it moving forward. And so based on the success of this pilot, Caterpillar has then again expanded this to other facilities and other school districts. The last example I'm going to share is around workplace education. And this is probably one that you might have heard about because Tyson has become pretty well known for this program. And so Tyson's project focuses on workplace education. And so they offered a pilot program with free access to classes in English, high school equivalency, U.S. citizenship, and training. And so this came out of, hey, we know that our staff need to develop skills. How can we offer that? How can we provide that directly to them? How can we support our employees in expanding their education? This ended up being an extremely successful initiative for Tyson. Nearly half of their workforce signed up for the program. They formally branded it as Upward Academy, 123% in ROI. And so this one is, I think, a really good example of, hey, we know there's a need. Here's an idea. Let's try it out. And of course, you can see that Tyson was quite successful and has now expanded this to many places. And so these are just examples of different pilot ideas that could come out of an Action Lab experience, but we certainly want to give you the agency to choose your pilot idea. And so employers in the Action Lab choose a pilot based off of your needs, organizational priorities, and staff capacity. So we don't pick the project for you. We create a container for you to think about projects. You'll brainstorm them. You'll get feedback from your peers. You'll get feedback from frontline workers. But really, the idea is yours. And I think that's really important. And that's why when Scotty talked about who should be a part of this program, it's really important to think about who are the mix of individuals that you want to participate. Human resources, operations, because you want to pick a pilot project that you can actually implement your organization and something that you can actually really do. And so we create a space for you to brainstorm these key challenges, you'll get feedback, but really this is going to be an opportunity for you to think about how you can move the needle at your own organization. The pilot ideas can address a number of different buckets, so I just wanted to share a couple of those. Culture, inclusion, data-driven, family-sustaining wages, professional development. Really, again, we want to create a container where we elevate the ideas that you have and help you think about how you can implement them at your organization. And so the next steps as we come to a close here and transition into our question and answer session is that we're going to ask you all to think about who is the right team that should participate in this program. Who can move the needle on this? Operations folks, HR folks, whoever is in the position of power to enable to, support a pilot project, we'd want them to be a part of this program. It's also important to us that you have executive buy-in and that leadership agrees in your participation in the program, because we know that it's important for your leaders of your organization to sign off so that you can actually find the time to participate, but also so that you're able to use organizational resources to move forward your pilot project ideas. And so as we sort of transition into thinking about what it takes to be a part of this program, we want you to understand like who are the right people that should participate, and do your senior leaders sign off on your participation in the program. I know that we went through the slides really quickly. We'll be sending these to you all as a follow-up. We also are recording this call. So no worries if you didn't capture all the information, but want to just take a moment now to transition into question and answer for the rest of the time that we have together. What questions do folks have? What's coming up for folks in terms of what you've heard about the program thus far?
I just put a question in the chat, but that microloan program Rhino seemed extremely fascinating. And I'm curious, did that turn into an additional revenue vertical for the company?
I don't know the revenue vertical based on the actual loans. What I know is that it improved retention in terms of it was a benefit that employees didn't know that they could access it first, and then it provided a sense of security within the organization. And they've gone on to actually offer other programs that have improved retention. And so most of our companies have been reporting statistics from a retention standpoint, more than necessarily like a revenue, or I noticed you asked the question also about recruitment costs, but it's been much more about retention of employees. And then the impact of retention improvement is that there is a decreased cost in recruitment, and that it increases revenue if you're not spending money on recruitment.
Thank you. I was curious just because it sounded like from the description, the employees pay interest on that loan. So if they're paying interest on that loan, then the employer should make a profit on each loan that they provide. So I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, I know that wasn't their major driver. I also know that they weren't losing money based on the fact that they were generating these loans.
They were also working with a credit union, I believe, to facilitate the loans. So there was some cost sharing there. But we have, I can put in the chat just an overview of that program that we wrote with them.
Thank you.
Great questions, Michael. What's coming up? What else is coming up for folks? Folks have questions about the timeline, the structure of the program, frontline employees.
The experience I know has some added benefits that we didn't necessarily talk about. So for instance, we know that, you've been hearing about Tyson Foods. In one of our earlier cohorts, Tyson Foods formed an incredible bond and relationship with Patagonia. So two different industry, two different sizes, two different, perceived missions. And when we were visiting at Tyson Foods earlier this year, they were talking about, oh, we just got off a call with our colleagues at Patagonia. So you're building relationships with people across your region to be thinking about how to advance opportunity for frontline and entry-level employees, which is really fantastic. And you're building a connection with people who are raising questions that you have as well. We also, once you're part of Talent Rewire, you're always part of Talent Rewire. So we've been offering some really unique alumni experience as well recently to ensure that people continue to feel supported in this effort. So we know that when you're trying to make difficult changes, knowing that you're not going alone is super helpful. And we've really been trying to build out that community aspect of this work.
Scotty,
guess-
this is Cindy. I can definitely +1 those two benefits. I've been doing this cohort work for 4+ years now. And one of the major benefits for the employers and their teams that participate is the peer learning and peer sharing aspect of this work, and building the community of practice and the champions of this movement moving forward is a huge benefit for employers. I can't stress that enough. So, and the other comment I did want to make for the employers on the call is that, you know, there is no data sharing. Your own data is your proprietary data. So there is no data sharing among other employers. I just wanted to be clear with that. That is sometimes a question that comes up, and I just wanted to make sure people were aware of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Cindy. Irene, I saw your hand up. Was that a question you had, or?
I was just wondering what maybe some of the employers who are on the call thought about the program, or whether they had questions. I know this might have probably the first time hearing about it, and just wondered if people had any reactions to it. And if not, that's okay.
Well, in LB Steel's several of the programs that you've listed, we've had in place for 8 years, and one of the most successful ones is the employee loan program. Our employees, anytime that they have an issue, they can come right to HR, and we give them an interest-free loan, and we do a incremental deduct on their on payroll, as an example. And that's actually that struck me when you said that, because that's actually a really good program that we've been doing for years, and the retention of our employees is very good.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, Dave, I didn't know that. I think that's a great piece of information.
It is. It's a great example of what people can do, and we'd be happy to, have you join us and help brainstorm other examples of things or ways or pilots that you can implement, for sure. Any other questions?
Any next steps for us? I know we maybe need to do some additional employer recruitment, but any other steps that you need on our side?
So if you're an employer and you're on this call, please reach out to one of us. It can be, you can reach out to Cindy, you can reach out to Ray or myself. But the goal is that if you're interested, we would love to connect with you around an MOU and a registration. We would also be happy to answer any other questions you might have that you don't want to ask in this call. So let us know if you need to follow up with us in that way. If you are one of our partners on this call, I would say continue to share the information. We would love to have a robust cohort. We know that it is incredibly beneficial when we have, 6 to 8 employers who are participating, and that it builds a really wonderful network within Chicago area, as well as, part of our broader national network as well. But Ray and I, thank you, Talent Rewire team members who joined as well. And Ray and I will stay on, but if you have no further questions, feel free to log off, and we will talk to you soon, we hope.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate this.
Yeah, please invite others.
To go. Have a good day, everyone.